Welcome to this video based on the Week 11 chapter discussion questions about westward expansion. The first question was, what was the idea of manifest destiny and how was it used to justify westward expansion? The expression manifest destiny seems to have first been used by John O'Sullivan in a newspaper article in 1845, in which he argued it was the manifest destiny of the United States to overspread the continent of North America. If we break it down, manifest means obvious. Destiny means that which is ordained by God or ordained by fate, whichever way you look at it, whether you look at it in a religious or a non-religious way. So the idea was it was the superiority of the American way of life, its superior democratic institutions and its superior economic exploitation of the land that gave it not just the right, but also the obligation to overcome other peoples in North America, to take land from the Mexicans, from the Native Americans, and so on. And this was okay because it was manifestly their destiny. It's a bit of a circular argument. We're more successful, therefore we have a right to overpower other people because we are more successful. The implications of this are that it gave an ideology to westward expansion. The United States, with its obviously superior civilization, deserved that land more than the Mexicans or the natives. The natives were characterized as simple tribes who were just on the land, hunting on it, for example, but not really in possession of it, not exploiting it like farmers, which in the eyes of Europeans and United States citizens at the time was the highest form of economic activity, was farming or industry, versus the more, in their eyes, more primitive way of life of the Native Americans. The second question was, how did westward expansion affect white Americans' view of Native Americans? Well, clearly there'd always been conflict between Native Americans and the United States and white settlers. There'd always been white attitudes, which we today would call racist, towards the Native Americans, but these become hardened by the idea of manifest destiny. In colonial and early Republican times, there was at least a sense that the natives were people you should make treaties with. There was an admiration in early times for the so-called noble savage, whose way of life you admired as equal to or even superior to your own way of life. With manifest destiny and westward expansion, we see the Native Americans as in the way, that they're seen as being an inconvenient barrier towards America's destiny. And therefore, they are written off as savage, primitive people who are dangerous or attack innocent settlers and so on, and therefore they have to be removed. Even the more positive view of Native Americans sees them as victims to be pitted. Either way, they're seen as unsuited to live in the modern world and therefore just have to make way for American westward expansion. The third question asked, what were the consequences of the war with Mexico? Well, the obvious literal consequences were a vast extension of territory for the United States. Texas, California, New Mexico, and a whole bunch of what today are states of the United States were brought under American rule through the war with Texas and the later unification of Texas with the US, and then the American seizure of lands further west. The most serious consequence of this for American politics is it brought back the issue of whether slavery was going to be allowed into the West or not. In 1820, let me use my high-tech visuals here. In 1820, the Missouri Compromise had limited slavery. Let's see if we can get that image on the screen, to that area in purple on the map. The westward expansion was limited to below this line corresponding to the southern border of Missouri. Therefore, most of the newly acquired territories by the Louisiana Purchase were not going to be open to slavery. The capture of those Mexican territories opened up a whole larger area of the West. Again, high-tech visuals here. This map, we see, wrong map, excuse me. That's the same map again. In this map, we see the United States after the Mexican War. We'll come to the 1850 Compromise, which is shown on this map next week. But here we see how Missouri Compromise line is extended westwards. But a lot more territory, notably Texas, which joins the Union as a slave-owning state, and these territories here, New Mexico, could potentially be brought under slave ownership, not to mention Southern California. And these territories in the Northwest, which are now vastly bigger than they were before, where previously slavery had been banned, the issue of whether slavery should be let into those Northwestern territories, both the old Northwest and the new Northwestern territories in Oregon, etc., that was reopened. The slave owners wanted not only to extend the Missouri Compromise line, but also to reopen the debate about whether slavery could go into the whole of the West, not just into the so-called slave states, such as Texas, where it was allowed by the state constitution.